Hello everyone, welcome. Let's all rise for the Star-Spangled Banner. Please be seated. Hello, I'm Tiffany Trotter, head of the Middle and Upper School, coming to you live from Brooklyn. Good morning, class of 2020, board members, administration, faculty, families, and friends, and welcome to Kew-Forest 2020 commencement ceremony. This is a momentous day for our 22 soon-to-be graduates, for it marks the end of an era in their lives. As we come together to witness and participate in these closing moments, I'd like to share some thoughts on the connection between my favorite kinds of books, selecting a grad school, and living in New York City. As many of you know, I don't consume media like most people. I don't own a television, I don't have a Netflix or Hulu account, and I rarely watch YouTube. All of this is a result of growing up with books. I was an avid childhood reader, and I still default to novels for my indoor recreation. I read a ton of them, from Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, and by the way, reread C.S. Lewis' The Chronicles of Narnia after a year or two of college. You'll find it fascinating what you missed as a child. But from Tolkien to C.S. Lewis, to Ursula Le Guin and R.A. Salvatore, to contemporary folks like Shannon Mayer and Brandon Sanderson. One of my favorites, though, who has been killing me slowly for years now, is George R.R. Martin. Everyone knows about Game of Thrones. Who hasn't heard of or seen the TV show? Well, I haven't seen the show, but fear not. I knew all about Game of Thrones decades before most people, well, one decade, because I read what he had at least written soon after it came out. I'm very familiar with the story arcs of fantasy fiction, and Martin set his world up with compellingly flawed and complex characters, just the way I like. And then he killed Ned Stark. Please understand, in the world of fantasy fiction, people like Ned Stark are not supposed to die. I was floored. Perhaps all of you TV and movie viewers will consider me naive, but I just couldn't believe what he'd done. And so early in a book, what was he going to do with the rest of the series? Well, there was one way to find out, and so with that one plot twist, I was hooked. Though we may not recognize them as such, plot twists pop up in our lives all the time. Many of you knew that I grew up in California. As a child and even in college, I never had any intention of leaving the state. And to this day, when I'm there, I feel like I'm home. And yet, when applying to graduate schools, I looked at the top programs across the country, and after admissions, I visited them. New York and Columbia were too different. Austin was too unorganized. Durham was too dark and segregated. And so I headed back home thinking I'd go to Berkeley. As I waited in Dallas-Fort Worth for my connecting flight from Duke back to California, I glanced up at the departures board and saw a flight to Chicago, leaving in an hour. I already knew I had no intention of attending the University of Chicago, and I hadn't even bothered planning to visit. My advisor had warned me that he found their program and reputation too conservative. But as I eyed that departure board, I thought, I've never been to Chicago. I could just visit, right? So I got on a payphone and called the history department's office to ask if there were any grad students who could host me. And lo and behold, they organized a homestay, appointment with professors, and an airport pickup on the spot. I was both pleased and impressed, and so I dished my flight home for a spontaneous trip to Chicago. 5 months later, I'd moved to the city and stayed for 7 years. Never saw that coming. Moving to New York happened much the same way. Exeter is a beautiful place, but after 9 years in small-town New Hampshire, I ached to get back to a place that felt like home. My search focused on California, and it was only due to an offhand suggestion by a colleague that I looked at New York. I'd never been someone who dreamt of living in New York City. Visited several times, and it was fine, but not manna from heaven. And so finding myself here, loving this city, and feeling for the first time ever that this place isn't just another stop on my way back home, that's surprising. It's a twist. And so here we are today on this June 7th morning, and we're in the midst of a new vast and profound plot twist. The world we live in today is so very different from the one we inhabited just 3 months ago. Remember when people used to blow on cake and then other people would eat it? They still can, but casual meetups are no longer casual. Our focus on preserving our own health leads us to conflate social distance and physical distance rather than extending empathy and compassion. Anxiety and fear abound. And in our homes and in our city, tempers flare far too easily. This is not what was supposed to happen. So what can we do? To you, class of 2020, I say, take a tip from George R.R. Martin and use this plot twist to launch something entirely new and unexpected. I say go forth with a remix of Natasha Bedingfield's lyrics in mind. You're just beginning. Depends in your hand, ending unplanned. Today is where your book begins. The rest is still unwritten. Congratulations again to the class of 2020. Can we all please rise and offer a round of applause? And now, please welcome Head of School, Mrs. Carla MacMullen.
Greetings, Kew-Forest community, and most importantly, the class of 2020 and their families and loved ones. What a momentous day. Not the way any of us expected it, but momentous all the same. We are gathering today for a graduation, a commencement. For centuries, a graduation has served as an exuberant punctuation point at the end of time spent as a student. For the members of the class of 2020, today's graduation also marks a new beginning. Though we currently live in the midst of uncertainty, this and any new beginning is hopeful and exciting. As I contemplated what I wanted to share with you, our seniors, my thoughts gravitated to what you've experienced between March 12th and today. You departed Kew-Forest for what some believed would be a temporary separation from our beloved school and this remarkable community. You experienced the final quarter of the school year in remote learning, and you resigned yourself to necessary restrictions on daily mobility for your own safety and that of others. You worked hard to finish your coursework and grieved what was lost by not being able to be at Kew-Forest in person. As I thought about all of this and each of you, I identified meaning and lessons from this unreal time and experience. Growing up happens because of constant development in your personhood, in your understanding of the world around you, and most significantly, in your understanding of yourself. Your development is both internal and influenced by family members, your friends and classmates, and I firmly believe your teachers, coaches, and mentors at Kew-Forest. Your development has happened in a natural progression over months and years. You and the adults around you may not have readily noticed it until one day you and they could clearly see that you were different. Sturdier and more independent, as well as more knowledgeable and experienced. But this time between March 12th and now has brought unique and sometimes unbearable challenges. Howard Schultz speaks truth about your experience over the last 86 days when he said, "In times of adversity and change, we really discover who we are and what we're made of." The last 3 months have included separation from friends who entertain and ground you, separation from the rhythm of the Kew-Forest campus and your teachers who teach you more than the subject matter at hand, and separation from a familiar mode of teaching and learning. Zoom and other means of video conferencing have shown themselves to be inadequate substitutes for the warmth and spontaneity of in-person interactions. You may also have experienced challenges figuring out the shortest amount of time required to leave your bed and sit in front of your computer for class, the challenges of maintaining a strong Wi-Fi connection, or even the challenges over decisions about just how presentable your clothing needed to be from the waist up and how comfortable it could be from the waist down in the Zoom environment. You also, though, may have encountered real and impactful challenges with finding a quiet school location in your home, challenges with organization and sustaining focus, or challenges with personal motivation. The world, your world, was disrupted, and what you once counted on evaporated. Having the support of classmates sitting right next to you in class, hanging out in the upper school library, preparing for mock trial or Model UN, attending athletic practices and competitions, looking forward to social events, and the list goes on. In spite of the change and adversity caused by the pandemic and shelter-in status, I am convinced you have each discovered something about yourselves. The beauty of discovery is that it's unexpected, and I posit that some of your discovery might not be fully realized for quite a while. Delayed revelations when you are least expecting them. During this time away from the Kew-Forest campus, the discovery has come from what you experienced and what you missed. For instance, you may have realized you thrive in a more self-directed learning environment, or that you struggled without daily in-person contact to keep you moving forward. You might have had the opportunity to discover a hidden strength like patience, or a hidden talent like baking. Out of necessity, you might have identified your own anxiety due to so much uncertainty and hit upon productive ways to soothe it, like sharing your experience with someone you trust or by being physically active. You may have also come to know that time with your family has been a gift that will bolster you when you take the next step in your academic career. In becoming who you are, adversity has served as an accelerant to valuable self-knowledge. You will be able to draw on this new knowledge now and in the future in a time of need. Now, back to the person connected to that quote. Howard Schultz was born in 1953 to a Jewish family and grew up in the Canarsie public housing projects in Brooklyn, New York. Some of you may already know that Mr. Schultz is the person who created what we know as Starbucks. For centuries, coffee houses have served as a vehicle for what we are craving right now, community. Coffee houses fuel us in tangible ways, yet they also sustain us as gathering spots for interpersonal connection. Places for casual interactions, deep conversations, business meetings and interviews, people watching, and places to set up shop, the original WeWork, if you will. In many ways, the Kew-Forest community is like a coffee house. We are stronger and more comfortable and comforted when we are together. While we created a reasonable facsimile for community in the remote environment, it has not been the same. You know that, and this might be one of the biggest reasons that our 86 days apart has been hard. A community is defined by its purpose, rituals, and common values. We have all learned over the last 3 months that community is more important and essential to our being than we might have thought. Kew-Forest is not the only community you belong to, but it is one you have spent a lot of time in, even if you've only been with us for this school year. Part of the hopefulness of the new beginning that starts today comes from imagining the new communities you will join when you leave this one. Communities in your dorm, in your major, in your clubs and activities, and in your college classrooms. The adults in the Kew-Forest community who played a part in raising you up are excited for you, while also hoping that you remember the community you came from and the one you contributed to with all of your accomplishments and who you each are as individuals. In closing, I want to extend my deep gratitude to family members of the class of 2020 who made it possible for you to attend Kew-Forest. Your trust in us and your commitment to this school community is deeply appreciated. To the class of 2020, I see you. I see you clearly. I see you for who you've been as a group at Kew-Forest, leaders and role models. I see you for who you are as individuals, supremely unique, incredibly talented, shining with promise, and ready for the next step. I believe you are destined to do great things. We will miss you, and we send you off with admiration, gratitude, and love. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mrs. MacMullen. It is my pleasure now to introduce our first senior speaker, Hunter Mills.
Today marks the day of our high school graduation. Wow, what a big deal. For 12 or more years, we have been in the educational system, learning, working, and studying our way up the education totem pole. We have spent this time becoming a family, sharing a lot of special memories. During those 12 years, we have all experienced ups and downs, whether it be receiving an award or failing an exam, but we all continue to persevere, completing task after task. Today, we are all on top of that totem pole. Today, we can stand or sit, hear and reflect on what that hard work was for. Today is a day where we get to say goodbye to our adolescent selves and greet the strange world that is home to adults. We looked forward to this day with anticipation, and then a wild virus appears. Hopefully you get this joke. If you don't, forget it ever happened because another bad joke is on the way. Knock knock, who's there? SARS. SARS who? SARS-CoV-2. And then this SARS-CoV-2 proceeded to trash our celebration. Prom. What's that? Vacation? You're funny. Graduation? You don't need that. So, today we all remain at home in a paradox of emotions. Elated that we have finished high school, but disconsolate that we never got a chance to say goodbye to the world of adolescence. We feel as though this moment should be unique, an unforgettable ceremony that we won't forget. Or should it be a ceremony similar to that of our parents, grandparents, etc.? Our guardians would also want it to be that way. I have now lost count of how many times someone has shown pity about how sad they feel for us, that we don't get to experience what they had. But, embodying what I've learned this year, my classmates can back me up on this two-word statement. Ceremonies change. And so, when someone says they're sorry that we can't have the same celebration that they had when they graduated, I say, you're missing the point. Is today not a ceremony in celebration of our graduation? Oh, but it's online. It's not enough. It's not enough according to whose standard? Who set up the standard of what a graduation ceremony is? History? Well, if any generation has had more history than any others, it's ours. We have had the burden of experiencing the effects of climate change more than any other generation. Children in Jakarta might not even get to see their home in the future. Why? Because it's sinking. We have witnessed some of the largest refugee crises in recent history, whether it be the South Sudanese, the Rohingya Muslims, or the Syrians. And today, we have her graduation in the midst of a pandemic, something I'm pretty sure our parents didn't experience. And so, I say the celebration of our graduation doesn't have to be the norm. Our ceremony can be what we make it, to define the time in which we are currently. Right now, that time calls for unconventional versions of celebration, including online versions. So, while some may yearn for an in-person graduation, myself being no exception, that would be an added bonus. But there is one timeless way to celebrate this moment that remains. It's celebrating the achievements in our lives, day to day, when those achievements occur. Completing that project that you've worked on for a week. Understanding how to resolve a problem you have been incapable of finishing before. Solving a question that intrigued your mind. Getting into a college you wanted to get into. These little celebrations are honoring the same things you would be celebrating today if we met in person. In fact, they would yield an even greater celebration, as all those little celebrations at the times of your achievements would ensure you never forgot any of your accomplishments. For example, I don't remember how I felt completing my history debate in November, but if I had celebrated that event then, I would remember the feeling now, just like with those memories and feelings I do remember. For example, my last H1. In my opinion, that was one of the most successful, but more importantly, fun conferences the club has had. Or our mock democratic debate back in March, which is arguably one of the funniest experiences I've had at KF. Warren definitely won that debate. I mean, how could Klobuchar possibly have thought to win? Or even our infatuation with granola in the cafeteria. Memories like these are parts of KF that we take with us, and I encourage you to celebrate and make memorable the events that happen day to day. Don't be so melancholy that we can't have something in person right now. On another note, I would also like to take this time to thank our wonderful teachers who have taught us all an immeasurable amount of knowledge. These are the people who have prepared us with the skills required to enter the world home to adults. I would also like to thank our classmates, also known as our friends, who have made my high school experience fun and something unforgettable. Bigger accomplishments, experiences, and achievements are to come from us. Now, we can make decisions to chase the goal we have never been able to reach at a pace that we never could maintain before. Saying this, don't be so upset and frustrated about our current circumstances. I know that I can now say goodbye to my KF, my high school world, happily, and hope you can too.
Thank you, Hunter. I will now present the Kourides Trophy, which is awarded to the senior who has achieved the highest academic grade point average for the 4 years of secondary school. The class of 2020 recipient of the Kourides Trophy is Hunter Mills. I would now like to introduce our second senior speaker, Bivas Thapa.
Hello, KF faculty, KF parents, and KF students. My name is Bivas Thapa, and I have attended the Kew-Forest school for a very, very long time. 12 years to be exact. From 1st grade to 12th grade, I've been at Kew-Forest. 12 years is a lot of time. The phrase "a lot" is too finite to even encompass how long 12 years feels to me. No word, sentence, or short speech can embody those 12 years. Worst of all, the COVID pandemic has created an environment where we seniors cannot have the finality of high school years that we were promised. We don't have prom, we don't have a proper graduation, and thus we don't have closure. The whole act of closure is mythologized to mean something great. Stories have happy endings, and cultural ceremonies like weddings, funerals, and graduations are built around the premise that the ending of being single, of life, and of high school is celebrated because it means progression. There's an underlying assumption in all of these conclusive moments that everything is resolved, and thus we can move forward. The feeling of resolution is lost to me because I never got to properly say goodbye to everyone. I can't physically see anyone's face, and I can't directly talk to anyone that I've known for 12 years. The whole purpose of graduation is to formally say goodbye to childhood and become self-responsible and individual young adults. Yet how can we progress past that point, past childhood, if we cannot physically say goodbye to our childhood peers that we've had for 12 years? The whole act of closure is flipped on its head. So the only venue for closure is today's speech. And yet whatever I say in this speech, the words, sentences, and paragraphs, can never do those 12 years justice. The only way I could truly do those 12 years justice is by writing every single memory that I've had involving this school. And no one wants to hear that. That would be a very messy speech. So the best I can do is describe a major character change that I went through within these last 12 years. In elementary and middle school, I prided myself on being special and perfect in the eyes of my teachers. Everyone wants to feel like a person, an individual, and teachers complimenting me and signifying me as smart made me feel more individual. I clung to that shtick because I desired so much the satisfaction of being called smart. My whole identity revolved around this notion that I was the smartest in class. Teachers and my classmates enabled this attitude by continually portraying me in this light. If I were not as smart, if I weren't pushing the boundaries of perfection, and if I wasn't annoyingly participating in class, I didn't feel like I had any worth. Thus, throughout elementary and middle school, I pushed this notion towards teachers and students that I was the smartest, the brightest, and the prodigy. If I didn't meet any expectations and their expectations of my intellectualism, I would get anxious. I feared their potential negative judgment of me, so I dutifully studied as hard as I could. I remember memorizing this one time where the entire science textbook, I just memorized it, just so that in class I could get the satisfaction from answering every single question the teacher asked. I was incredibly obsessed with keeping up this smart kid persona. Exams, tests, and quizzes were the true indicators of my intellectualism. They were to me my proof that my classmates and my teachers' expectations of me were right. As a result, I feared judgment from others. I was sensitive about my self-image, and I developed an over-perfectionist drive around my work. There are infinite ways to make someone happy. And the way I sought happiness was through seeking the recognition of my superficial intellectual talents. My whole identity was built around this premise of receiving recognition through achieving perfect marks and appearing smart. I seemed to care too much about what others thought of me, but at the same time I believed that seeking validation from others was a bad and pathetic look. I was pretty hypocritical. So I suppressed a lot of my real validation issues, the fact that I wanted to seek approval from others, and made myself, in reaction to that, counter-dependent. I avoided others, I appeared aloof and quiet so that I wouldn't seem like I was seeking others' approval, yet I truly was dependent on other people's recognition. I may have not looked like I cared, but I truly did when someone said I was smart or distinguished. I remember in one of our nature's classroom trips that usually the middle school goes on. It's a nature's retreat that middle schoolers go to. And although I had some of the most fun in my life exploring nature with all of my classmates, I remember I was, even then, purposefully seeking to look knowledgeable and independent to further my independent smart kid persona. As knowledgeable as I seemed, I was anxious that through some slip-up, people might look at me as stupid or incapable. I may have had the most fun in those nature's trips, but I was struggling with my identity. This identity exhausted me, and by high school, I began wanting to escape my identity purgatory. If I didn't feel like me, I don't know what would happen. And I didn't feel like me. Rather, my superficial interpretation of what people expected of me. The communications I had with others were incredibly superficial because my personality was superficial. I slowly began to realize that if I wanted to make more meaningful connections, I should abandon my superficial attempts at recognition and my attempts to mask it through ignoring others. Yet I hesitated and never truly felt like I was true to myself for a large part of my K-12 experience. mainly because I was pessimistic about my chances of ever changing my identity, as I felt like it was so strongly ingrained in me, within me. It all changed due to this very popular Kew-Forest high school extracurricular activity, which is MacMullen. MacMullen flipped everything. Not only was I not selected to join the team in 9th grade, while all my friends were selected, thus putting my persona of being the smartest and the best in shambles. The experience upended my conceptions about interpersonal interaction. MacMullen had everything I feared. There were large crowds of bustling and fast-talking people. Conversations moved at a very rapid pace. Those conversations were incredibly mechanical, and everyone judged you if you made a slight slip-up in lingo. I've always been a very conscientious and introverted person. The MUN's social interactions were minimized to judgmental, fast-paced, and competitive showmanship tests, lacking any of the social nuances and closeness of real social interactions. As a very conscientious and introverted kid, that's very scary, because I wanted social interactions to be meaningful and symbiotic, but they weren't, and there was no time for my desire for better social interactions, so I was forced to adapt. I did the whole MUN thing. Talked fast, seemed like I was in charge, always came in with sharp ideas, and always focused on where each and every person was going to be and why. After these MUN experiences, I realized that personality and rules are changeable, because I became a completely different person just by the environment I was in. Now equipped with the knowledge that personality and my conception of others are malleable, I began to let go of my own internal struggle of looking for approval from others. I accepted that I was seeking validation from others, and I began to get good grades, not for their approval, but for myself. I still acted like I was aloof and quiet, yet I was no longer dependent on others' approval and was trying to escape that fact. I had carved out an individuality for myself, and only for myself. None of it would have been possible without my classmates, without seeing how they carried themselves with confidence and passion about the things they love, whether it was science or music or politics. I would have never built my own confidence without their own interpretations of confidence. I would have never realized that relying on others for cheap and superficial affection wasn't healthy without looking at how other people reconciled their own identity problems through confidence. So I ended my dependency issues and my overall test anxiety by looking outwards towards others, observing how others carried themselves with confidence so that I could evolve into a more independent, confident, and focused being, unfazed by judgment. People define things too much. Your school years are the best years, some may say, and others may just say they're your worst years, being very pessimistic. Or some may just define their childhood through one simple memory that sticks out from the rest. People put labels on large amounts of memories. In my belief, I find it difficult to pin one memory and one adjective, like so many other people do, to describe the past 12 years, because I believe that would be wrong. KF was a part of me for the entirety of my childhood. Although I may characterize my KF years as me going through that huge developmental change, it contains so much more than just one change, one memory, or one positive or negative connotation. There are infinite amounts of memories I have with KF. It's characterizing infinity, and no one is able to do that. I despise putting the essence of all of my memories into one finite speech. Screwing something so vast into a speech is just morbid for me. Ironically, the reason why I have qualms with using one word or one developmental change to characterize an entire 12 years is that it signifies closure. It signifies that those KF years aren't the present anymore, but rather the past, and my memories of KF are on the same level as millions of other memories I have. It's depressing that the typical rituals of closure are gone. the prom and non-virtual graduation, and it's depressing to think that all of these 12 years are just going to be another hazy memory. As daunting as letting go 12 years is, I'll take a lesson in my developmental change, where I was able to develop and carve my own individuality, to say that progression, finality, and the finite are necessary for our success. To complete the rite of graduation, we need to leave behind our childhoods, our old, obsessive childhood desires, in order to become independent, fully functioning adults. And that is what I wish to say to my current class of 2020, that we must let go, that as daunting as it may seem, we need to let go of our old childhood and finally transition into adulthood, since that is the only path to take.
Thank you, Bivas. And now I'd like to introduce our third senior speaker, Zeinedine Massoud.
To anyone else, 13 is just some normal number. To some, it's unlucky. But to me, it's quite the opposite. 13 means a lot to me. Could it be the number of cherished years I've spent at KF? Could it be because I'm the 13th person in my family to graduate from KF? Nah, I'm the 14th person, so that's not that. How about the 13 traits and skills Kew-Forest has taught me? It could even be the 13 teachers who I had through my high school to help me thrive and become who I am today. But the answer isn't just one of these things. It's all of these things I've mentioned and more. I have spent 13 years at this school, seeing people come and go, but the class of 2020 here have all stayed, and I have seen their kindness shine and their humor cheer me up on sad days. This class isn't just my friends, they are my family. Like Daeden, who always wants to have a party at my house, so that must mean he wants to live with me, right? My peers encourage not just me, but our community members too. Take Lambert, for example, always encouraging me to chase my dreams, even if they may end up with me getting shot down. Every one of you who I've seen grow are true friends, and I will miss you dearly. You are friends who are always there for each other if we need anything. You are friends with whom we could share a laugh with or get food with after school. It will be hard for me to say goodbye to you. If I missed Daeden in 11th grade math class when he was gone for 5 minutes down the hall to get a drink of water, then I would definitely miss my entire class as we move on to the next chapters of our lives. I would not just miss my classmates, but also my teachers who have been with me my entire high school career. They were there to encourage me, inspire me, and make me feel at home. Mr. Bush's teaching of chemistry and physics gave me the motivation to want to pursue science in college. And Mr. Wong's teaching of AP Bio just reinforced my interest in wanting to study environmental science. Science may be my favorite subject, but that doesn't mean I forget about the others. I owe my thanks to Miss Kourides for showing me that parts of history, like the 60s counterculture movement, could be really fun. I owe my thanks to Dr. Graham for giving us amazing books to read and discussions that I would take with me to college. I owe my thanks to Mr. Pinero for increasing my interest in math, even if Rohan asks questions that always take us off topic. I owe my thanks to Dr. Spelman for his teaching of myth, which had to be one of my favorite classes this year, because we read myths and we watched movies and explained the deeper meaning of all the movies. And I thank Mr. Somers, who, although he was not my teacher this year, was always there to talk to whoever needed anything. He really understands the needs of the students. Although I was not able to name every teacher and faculty member who helped me shape my high school career, every one of them cares about the students and always makes sure they are all right. That is why I am grateful that you are all there for us, and I wish you for nothing but the best in the future. So to my classmates in the class of 2020, I wish you the best wherever life may take you, and let us keep the school chat active. You know, the one I helped create. I will miss all of you and all the memories we had together, all the memories we will have together. I'm not going to say goodbye because we aren't leaving. We're just going our separate ways, and I know we will meet again soon.
Thank you, Zain. The presentation of the roses is a tradition at Kew-Forest where our graduates have a chance to give thanks to someone in the community who has been instrumental in their education. This year, our graduates would like to share a bit about how their Rose recipient has impacted their lives. Please enjoy this presentation with me. It's moments like these that provide a window into how much family, friends, and teachers have had a deep and lasting impact on our graduates, and for that, I add my thanks to theirs. On that note, I would now like to introduce our fourth senior speaker, Aliya Stubenbord.
Who would have thought that the last time we'd be walking into Kew-Forest as seniors would be back on Thursday, March 12th? I hope you and your family are safe and have found a good Netflix show to binge. You all know I'm not very competitive, and I know it's not a competition, but if it were, Liam, Zane, and I would be winning for years spent at KF. And even then, I might still have them beat, as I was an aftercare till 5th grade. After 13 years, I'm without a doubt able to call KF my second home, with memories from both within and outside the building. I started here in kindergarten. That was actually my first time wearing a cap and gown. Now the gown actually fits me, and the hat doesn't cover my eyes as I read this speech. I remember playing Don't Touch the Floor in the newly opened playground in 4th grade. And in middle school, we would sing our hearts out to the Longitude-Latitude song in Miss Vestio's geography class. When I was 15 years old, I discovered the joy of granola days at lunch. Even while traveling, we stuck together. We all remember being a part of Brian's group in Philadelphia. Together we faced the Dragon's Tooth Rock and survived. And even now, as we attend this virtual event, we are still together despite us all being in our separate homes. That is the magic of Kew-Forest. It brings people together in so many ways. Kew-Forest doesn't just bring people together physically and spiritually, but also culturally. All of the memories I have from Kew-Forest were made with such a diverse group of people. Because of that, I've learned how important it is to value people's differences and backgrounds. One of my favorite memories and events at KF is our annual International Night. And no, it's not just because there's a massive amount of delicious food. It is one of my favorite because it celebrates all the different cultures we have at the school under one roof. This night wouldn't be for what it is without our unique community. International Night just highlights how diverse Kew-Forest truly is. As a school located in the middle of Queens, it would be easy to take for granted that our student population comes from families of all different backgrounds. But you shouldn't ever take it for granted. In your next stage, wherever that may be, you must always push for environments that truly value inclusion. Make sure diversity isn't just a box that gets checked, but that everyone around you is made to feel like they matter and belong. Remember our senior ball and the message that we wanted to convey. And for family and friends who have not seen this masterpiece, I'll briefly explain. The class of 2020 has always been interested in social justice and for sticking up for what we believe in. Last summer, we were eager for our turn to paint the senior wall. Our ideas ranged from the Kool-Aid Man to the Lion King, but one idea seemed to hit home: the Powerpuff Girls. Female superheroes saving the town in style, complete badasses. We shouted out the social movements that spoke to us and highlighted our values of inclusion and awareness for the whole student body to see. Under each Powerpuff Girl, we painted a symbol of a social movement that has importance for the class, including the Me Too, the hashtag Me Too, Black Lives Matter, and the LGBTQ+ movements. We have always been encouraged to lead by example, much like the Powerpuff Girls, and we wanted our wall to illustrate that. So seniors, I hope each of you brings the essence of a Powerpuff Girl with you throughout life. Remember to make sure that your voices are heard, be aware of challenges faced by underrepresented groups in the country, and pave the way for future generations. We should be proud of the marks, both literal and figurative, that we've made on our school. I wish you all the best of luck, and as we would say in Mun, I yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, Aliya. At this time, I would like to acknowledge the recipients of our Lifetime Achievement Award, which honors those students who have attended the Kew-Forest School from kindergarten through 12th grade. The 2020 Lifetime Achievement Award goes to Liam Kiyashka, Zeinedine Massoud, and Aliya Stubenbord. And now I present to you our final senior speaker for this morning, Daeden Gordon Somers Archer. Please welcome him.
I always imagined myself saying these words on the stage of the hot, sweaty gym with the smell of summer in the air, but I guess the Zoom gallery will suffice. I visited Kew-Forest for the first time 11 years ago. Being an overdramatic youngster, I thrashed my arms on the way in and sat in silence thereafter, nervous because of the curious faces and foreign walls. But those faces in Miss Manos' second grade classroom would soon become the faces of my extended family, and those walls, my second home. One of the things I love about Kew-Forest is that every teacher encouraged us to ask questions. Whether we spent entire class periods asking Mr. Bush questions in physics, whether we asked questions just to get Dr. Spellman off topic in Latin, or whether we asked Mr. Panoro questions because he seemed to be speaking an entirely different language, that language being calculus. I mean, he really used to stand there and say that the area under a curve is equal to the limit as n approaches infinity of the sum of the function c times delta x. But you guys knew me as the person who would ask the one question we were all thinking but would not dare utter. Why do we need to learn this anyway? To quote the late great Albert Einstein, education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. When our teachers told us, be bold, go ahead, ask your questions because your classmates may be wondering the same thing, they were really insisting that we be bold enough to stand out and believe in our own thinking. Kew-Forest has been teaching us not how to be lifelong trivia heads, but how to learn, how to argue, how to collaborate, how to face unprecedented challenges and overcome them. For that, we thank you. But it is time for the baby birds to leave the nest. Fellow seniors, let us not lament the things that we could have had, nor what we should have had, because we are doing things differently. And to paraphrase entrepreneur and philanthropist Bill Gates, the people who change the world are the people who do things differently. Embrace it, ladies and gents. As we go on, remember the teachers, faculty, the staff, and the community that raised you, and be a part of the change. Let us raise the torch that is the education and unique experiences that Kew-Forest has provided us to light the future path ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Daeden. On June 11th, we will hold the Upper School Awards Assembly, where many members of the upper school student body will receive awards for their academic performance, their leadership, and their personal qualities. 4 awards, however, are reserved for graduation, and so I'll now present these 4 graduation awards. The Founders Award is given in memory of Guy H. Catlin, co-founder of the Kew-Forest School, to the senior whose many contributions to Kew-Forest reflect a spirit of enthusiasm and a commitment to excellence. The recipient of the Founders Award for 2020 for her spirit of enthusiasm and commitment to excellence is Xingyan Sunny Lau. The Marriott Award, in memory of Louis D. Marriott, co-founder of the Kew-Forest School, is given to that student who has shown the greatest personal growth and development during her or his career at Kew-Forest. The 2020 Marriott Award for showing the greatest personal growth and development goes to Nathan Riley and Aliya Stubenbord. The Millar Cup is awarded to that student who, through his or her contributions, has had the greatest positive impact on the Kew-Forest community. The 2020 Millar Cup for having this positive impact on the Kew-Forest school community also goes to 2 recipients, Alexander Pena and Lambert Schell. The Wilson M. Johnson Award Established by the Student Council of 1974 in memory of their beloved headmaster, is given to that member of the graduating class who best exemplifies the Kew-Forest qualities of character, service, and academic excellence. The 2020 Wilson M. Johnson Award for Character, Service, and Academic Excellence goes to Daeden Gordon Somers, Archer. And now I'd like to introduce our 2020 commencement speaker, John Lentini. A Kew-Forest graduate of the class of '93, John Lentini is a self-described world traveler, avid scuba diver, recovering investment banker, private business owner, leadership development coach, and part-time storyteller. Please join me in welcoming him.
Well, hello, Kew-Forest's class of 2020. Or as I understand, you've come to know yourselves the class of COVID-19. But really, class of 2020, wow. While being asked to speak at KF's commencement ceremony would have been an honor, really under any circumstances, to be granted the privilege of addressing such a landmark year is truly something special for me. I'm very grateful to your head of school, Carla MacMullen, for affording me this opportunity. Of course, the milestone year that 2020 was always destined to be on its own has now taken an even more prominent place in history's timeline. So many of you might be disappointed or perhaps a bit disillusioned to have had your graduation traditions forced away from norms. Take some solace in knowing that you now represent a true landmark class by which future generations will be benchmarked. There's value in being different, in being special. With the moment comes great responsibility and perhaps even greater opportunity. But let's rewind for a bit when I was in your place, if we can, 27 years ago, the class of 1993, not to date myself too much. Back then, the class of 2020 would have sounded like the title of some futuristic sci-fi fantasy or post-apocalyptic thriller. Back then, email and the internet were still just emerging concepts that my classmates and I would not yet begin to become familiar with for another year or two. We listened to our favorite music on CDs and watched movies on VHS tapes that we rented from Blockbuster Video. The mobile phone was still an abstract novelty item that the super wealthy sometimes used in movies, and video calls were purely futuristic. Come to think of it, perhaps the sci-fi fantasy is today's reality. To give you some context of the time and place, that same year, 17-year-old Leonardo DiCaprio had just starred in his very first Hollywood film. Hip-hop music and culture had taken firm hold of the mainstream, while Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Seattle grunge were starting to redefine what it meant to be a rock star, challenging the standards of excess that had crystallized the likes of Guns N' Roses. Michael Jordan had just led the Bulls to their first of 2 three-peat championship runs, well on his way to becoming the greatest athlete of a generation. On the politics side, Bill Clinton was into his first year as president, and with MTV's The Real World, the advent of reality television had just started its rise in prominence. What I'm trying to say is that the world has changed quite a bit since then. Now, I must admit, I can't recall even vaguely who spoke at my own Kew-Forest graduation, which is, of course, somewhat disheartening for me, as I can assume most of you won't remember me. But while my name and face may escape you, I do hope that I can share some sentiments that will stay with you for a while. During my time at Kew-Forest, my academic strengths and interests personally were focused mainly on history and English and the humanities. On the extracurricular side, I was vice president of the student council and editor-in-chief of the Forester. I had Mr. Werner for 8th grade physics and Mr. Spellman for Latin, who would soon head off to become the esteemed Dr. Spellman, of course. So perhaps the more things change, the more they actually do stay the same. I was, a pretty strong writer with a deep interest in politics and expected someday I might like to be a history professor, or perhaps a law degree might suit me. I also hadn't ruled out a career in politics longer term. Of course, as a long-haired metalhead and aspiring guitarist, my real dream was to be a rock star. Film was also a passion, so maybe what I really wanted to do was direct. The well-rounded education and open-minded worldview the Kew-Forest and its eclectic Renaissance faculty provided impacted me in ways that resonate deeply with me to this day. How much of who I am and what I value to those formative years. And for this reason, in 2016, I became one of the founding members of our current Kew-Forest Alumni Council, an evolving group that I strongly encourage you to get involved with. Ultimately, my KF experience led me to focus on universities with a strong liberal arts core curriculum, where the well-roundedness paralleled my KF experience. I settled on Fairfield University in Connecticut. Then, by pure serendipity, I landed a summer internship with a Japanese bank based on the 80th floor of 2 World Trade Center after my freshman year. I attempted on Wall Street during summers in high school, but had never really considered a career in investment banking. Little did I know that I ended up spending over 20 years in the industry. This internship and its direct career prospects led me to switch majors several times until it ultimately migrated full throttle across from my university's liberal arts school over to its business school. An MBA would follow years later. This was actually quite a departure from my natural academic strengths and interests. I can't complain. It served me well in terms of lifestyle and financial security, and while I have no regrets and genuinely enjoyed my career, if I had to do it all over again, my advice to my younger self, and in turn to you, would be to follow your passion and leverage your natural strengths. We must all learn to understand our weaknesses, of course, and seek to develop in those areas. But to truly excel, we must rest on the bedrock of our natural strengths and talents. Do what aligns with your personal values, what feeds your soul rather than your bank account, and I assure you the rewards will follow. As the great American writer Mark Twain once said, find a job you enjoy doing and you'll never have to work a day in your life. I was fortunate to have worked for some great leaders early in my career, which had a lasting developmental impact on me. Along the way, I also worked for some not so great leaders whose greatest teachings may have been even more powerful lessons in what not to do, or perhaps how not to behave. Never underestimate the power of adversity. It's one of life's greatest teachers. The corporate world produces many competent managers and skilled politicians, but in my estimate, far too few true leaders. Perhaps most poignantly, I experienced the tragic consequences of truly selfless leadership on September 11, 2001. At the time, I was still working on the 80th floor at 2 World Trade Center. Having been through the first Trade Center bombing in '93, my firm's senior management team took the very real threats to health and safety quite seriously. After the '93 bombing, my company had contracted to ensure all staff had an emergency grab-and-go bag in their desks. This kit included items such as emergency drinking water, face masks, emergency lights, whistles, and more. In the banking world of chasing almighty dollars and cents, this thoughtful approach to safety sent a subtle message that human capital was indeed our most precious asset. Fire drills were never taken lightly. On September 11th, 1 World Trade Center was struck at 8:46 a.m. While many were trying to discern what exactly had happened, their senior management wasted no time in aggressively forcing an evacuation. Ultimately, our 5 senior executives didn't stand a chance when a second plane crashed into floors 75 through 85 at 9:03 a.m. They'd stayed behind to ensure all had vacated. While my firm lost a tragic total of 24 people that day, we without any doubt had lost hundreds if not for the selfless efforts and quintessential leadership of top management. While first responders justly deserve praise for their efforts and sacrifice that day, it's important to note that there were many other heroes that day who didn't sign up for jobs or risking your life as part of the job description. As best-selling motivational writer Simon Sinek put it, leaders eat last. I remain deeply indebted to their sacrifice, of course. This milestone in my life created a true carpe diem attitude, which ultimately led me to seek global assignments. A semester abroad in Italy as an undergrad had sparked a travel bug, and I was now ready to reignite it. While a career in banking may not have truly fed my soul, as I alluded to earlier, the opportunities it afforded me to see the world enabled a personal journey that proved invaluable. To quote St. Augustine, the world is a book, and those who do not travel read only a page. Through work, play, and study, I've had the very good fortune to have lived in 6 countries, visited over 60, and traveled across all 7 continents. Fast forward to 2014, while working overseas with a Swiss bank in Poland, leading an organization of roughly 350 people. I applied to an internal education program that offered employees the opportunity to work with some of the firm's NGO partners. My particular assignment was to develop a coaching and mentoring curriculum with leadership at an NGO based in South Africa. This triggered my passion for leadership skills training, which has led to my current second career in leadership development. As the 35th President John F. Kennedy once said, leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. And today, I continue to learn as much as I endeavor to teach. So why have I bored you with all these minute details of my own personal story? Well, I guess it's because I want to impress upon you that life's a marathon, not a sprint. Take it slow and steady. Be patient. Uncertainty is a norm for many right now, but it's always been a norm for young graduates. For some of you, life's journey may present more of a straight line, but for most, it will be a meandering path with many detours. For all of you, there will be surprises, both good and bad. Embrace them. Make mistakes. In fact, make as many mistakes as you can, because that's what you'll learn from. You should never stop learning. Embrace criticism. In fact, demand it. We don't develop by way of praise. The sooner you thicken your skin to the fact that you're less than perfect, the faster and further ahead you'll be on the bumpy yet rewarding road towards that unattainable ideal of perfection. And that is what we call true excellence. It's a journey that matters after all, not the destination. I thank you for your time and wish you all the very best in all that you do. Thanks and stay well.
Thank you, John. And now, I ask that you all please rise and join us for the singing of the Kew-Forest alma mater. Lyrics will be shown on your screen.
All hail to the Kew-Forest, Bivas our song today. As loyal to the red and blue, we journey on our way. May we thy ideals cherish, thy noble purpose claim, so all the world may see that we fulfill our glorious aim. Our studies then be earnest, our joy, our friendship too. In work and play let us each day be steadfast, ever true. For all that thou hast taught us, we give our thankful praise. Kew-Forest alma mater, our song to thee we raise. Kew-Forest alma mater, our song to thee we raise.
Please be seated. And now comes the moment that our seniors have been waiting for, the awarding of the diplomas. At Kew-Forest, we do not give out our diplomas alphabetically. We give them out in a random order with the understanding that the graduate to receive their diploma last will leave Kew-Forest with some extra good luck. Mr. Christopher D'Amato, board chair, and head of school, Mrs. MacMullen, I now present to you the class of 2020. Lambert Shell. Shirley Frey. Michael Aliya. Daeden Gordon Somers Archer. Aliya Stubenbord. Alexander Pena. Yiri Zhang. Rachel Wolf. Hunter Mills. Liam Kiyashka. Bivas Thapa. Sherry Zhang. David Agbaro. Giovanni Taveras. Michael Lynn. Kay Coco Zhang. Nathan Riley. Wherever you are, will the last 5 seniors please stand? Our final 2020 diplomas are awarded to Zeinedine Massoud, Xingyang Sunny Lau, Rohan Gold, Laura Kim, and the senior leaving Kew-Forest with some extra good luck is Gabriela Duarte. Yay! Congratulations to the class of 2020. You may now switch your tassels from the right side to the left. Graduates, you now join a great body of Kew-Forest alumni. I know I speak on behalf of each member of the Board of Trustees, faculty, and staff when I say we hold only the best and brightest hopes, wishes, and expectations for you and of you. Congratulations again, and have a phenomenal day. Yeah!